Varun, right? Okay, we got Varun here. Guys, so today, welcome to the Creator Series with Amar. This is I think I forget. I think about the 13th or the 14th episode of the series, and I've got my friend Varun today uh, on the series. And Varun is a friend from Nielsen. We used to work in the same company at one point, although we were in different teams. Uh, yeah, so we know each other from then. And Varun is now the CEO of a company called Sports Uno, which is a technology a SaaS platform uh, for the sports industry, right?
Yeah.
That's broadly I would define it. I'm sure Varun will specifically talk about what Sports Uno does. Great, Varun. So thanks for your time. I hope you're doing well. And so to start with, tell us a bit about your journey. So start
Yeah.
with your journey, right? So because you an MBA and you worked in market research for a while, and then you moved to. So tell us a bit about your journey. How did you get into entrepreneurship? Let's start with that.
Yeah. Hi, Amar. Thank you so much for having me today on your podium. And it's great to share these small stories of budding entrepreneurs, like
Yeah,
people like us. And
right,
while our journey has just begun, I would not say that we have achieved something, but yeah, it's just begun, and it's still interesting because the kind of challenges which new entrepreneurs go through on in their day-to-day life once they take that leap of faith from their existing job and shift to something which is more towards more dynamic, more risky.
mm,
The journey is quite adventurous. So I'll quickly
yeah,
share something about the company and about myself. So as Amar, as you mentioned, I've done my MBA, went into market research, spent around good 7 years into market research, and then I, along with my other co-founders, decided to start a venture within sports. Now,
right,
what if I tell if I tell you what we guys do is basically, as you rightly said, we are in the sports and fitness domain, right?
mm,
And we are trying to digitalize this space
mm,
using various technologies, may it be software, may it be hardware, which is all in-house developed by us, and we get it deployed at various sports facilities. Now these could be sports academies, sports complexes, fitness institutions, or in training centers and stuff. The whole idea is to digitalize this space so that things can be done in a far more organized manner, and things can be managed more efficiently. Because if you look at the way things are being done in sports complexes or academies or any other fitness training centers, they're all done
right,
on pen and paper, right?
right, right.
And there is a huge gap, of how things are currently happening versus how amazingly they can be done by
Mm,
using any medium like technology. And
yeah.
that is where what we are trying to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right, great. So basically, I've been thinking. In fact, for the last over a month since we've been in the lockdown, I have been thinking about entrepreneurship quite a lot
Yeah.
because most of the gigs that I do right now are not happening, and I'm figuring how to go online. Plus, I've also been reading about entrepreneurship and how to figure out problems that you're working on. So
Yeah.
talk a bit about uh, how did you decide to get into this industry? Like
Mm.
there could be like if you talk about like entrepreneurships or entrepreneurs or investors, like for example, I just finished reading Peter Thiel, and he
Hmm.
says you have to identify a problem which you
Yeah.
can solve. And even Zuckerberg on Y Combinator, everybody
Yeah.
says you have to identify a problem to start with which you want to solve. How did you go about identifying this problem, and you thought that this was big enough worth working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give a brief background, how did we, come up with this solution per se,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So all of us, all the four co-founders, we are from the same school. So we all here
Mm,
from deepest Noida, and post our schooling days, we all went into different occupational, directions, and
yeah,
somebody became a lawyer, somebody went into consulting, I went into research, somebody went into sales, somebody into finance, and different fields.
right.
But the one thing that actually knit us all four together was the common interest in sports. And that is
Hmm.
one avenue where we always interacted with each other, brought out time from our weekends, ensured that we all meet up, enjoy ourselves, play a common sport, and so on and so forth. And
Yeah.
having being in this industry, we could actually realize every day, we could realize that, look, this is a problem which
Hmm.
can be solved and is not yet solved. Then some other day we realize, okay, this is also a problem which can be solved, and till now has not yet been solved. But what we need to understand, as an entrepreneur, that
Mm.
when you're into something, right,
Mm.
it's not important. And when you're into something, you would find problem statements every here and there, right? But not every problem statement is meant to be solved, by just picking it up. Okay, for example, if you become a new parent, right, you've just had your child, you will suddenly all of a sudden start seeing all these problems cropping up with respect to children clothes and the kind of toys that they're playing with, and various other factors. Probably as the time progresses, you will actually come up with a need. Okay, probably crash which are currently operating, they are not the best quality that you have out in the market. But that
Mm.
does
Mm.
not mean that that is a problem statement, and people go and start doing some kind of a business model on it. I'm not saying that
Mm.
business model cannot be derived out of it. Of course,
Mm.
something innovative can be brought out of it, but not every problem there is to be solved, and can or say not every problem is something that is a major problem. Problems are basically of two types. One are your underlying problems, which are supporters to a bigger problem which is out there, and it's
Mm.
always important to spot that main bigger problem, which is the core problem of the industry, and then go towards solving that. Right? If you
Mm.
look at our
Mm.
industry, there are around 18 to 20 companies out there right now who are all working on
Mm.
an aggregator model. Now, aggregator models are
Okay.
basically you're becoming like a book my show of sports facilities. What people
Right.
fail to understand, again, I'm not demeaning these companies, they have their own vision, they are doing excellent at their field. But what they fail
Mm.
to understand is, just by selling online slots for sports facilities, you're not actually digitalizing that space, because there is a greater need there. There's a greater need for digitalization, there's a greater need for improving the way things are done at the grassroots level. And for that,
Mm.
it's very important to address that core problem. The day you address that core problem, you
Mm. Mm.
automatically start addressing the other tertiary or the secondary problems which are there, right? Stuff like solving booking issues, and providing them other problems. So you have to
Right.
basically, in a nutshell, you actually have to identify that core problem which the business stakeholder or the particular industry stakeholder holds. And if you're able to
Yeah.
provide value on that problem, then your concept will be a sure hit.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
But once you identify the problem, so you're all passionate guys about you're passionate about sports and you've been in touch for a while. So that makes you kind of you gel well together, right? Which
Yeah.
is the problem that a lot of people say that you must start companies with people you trust, right? So that was a problem that you didn't have, and you were all passionate about sports. So once you identify, let's say, identified a problem, right? After that. How would you like there's a term that they keep throwing all the time, which is absolutely makes sense, product market fit. So how would you like because for a company to succeed eventually has to have revenue, right? So did you talk to those people? Would they be willing to pay for such a product, like, because you are a subscription based product now?
Yeah.
Did you speak to them that would they be willing to pay for something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, being from a market research background, it's quite, inbuilt in me now that, before we undertake any major decision, may it be pricing
Right.
of a product, or may it be launching a major feature on the product, or,
Okay.
doing anything which can have an impact, a long-term impact on the business, we
Right.
typically try and go and do some research on it. Why do we do
Okay.
research? Is basically what we do is we go and we go and we talk to people. We talk to the existing customers. We talk to, so like we are a B2B in company at the
Yeah.
moment. So what we do is we
Yeah.
not only talk to our clients, but we also talk
Mhm.
also talk to their clients. So it's more of a B2B2C kind of a research that we also conduct. Why? Because it's
Right.
very important to understand what does the end user want, and if as a
Right.
company you're able to provide the B2B players, your clients, the thing which their customer wants. So that is
Right.
that is that is that direct that is direct value to them, right?
Right. Right.
And because at the end of the day, if the end user is happy, they would come in more to the B2B guy whom we are servicing, and then the whole
Right.
cycle starts to flow like anything, right? And it's beneficial. So yes, market research is very very important, right? And
Okay.
basis market research, we take our decisions. So when it comes to pricing, when it comes to any kind of feature addition, as I told you, research is imperative, and that is what we always
Right.
do.
So you do
Yeah.
this. You do this in a structured way. You go to the, for example, you go to the facility. You speak to the owner. You speak to the students, for that matter. Is that the
Yeah.
way you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we typically speak to students. We speak to the parents, who are or who are the customers for the academy, right? Because they are the ones who are paying the academy fees. We also
Okay.
speak to the coaches at the facility. We speak to the business owners who are running those academies or who are running those sports facilities, right? Or who are running those fitness centers. Because it's
Yeah.
important to gauge the mindset of every stakeholder in the industry and
Right.
accordingly come up with a solution which is suitable to all the four stakeholders in our industry. If we miss out on any one of the on the interest of any one of the stakeholders, it's,
Mm.
your product will bomb, and eventually, if not today, tomorrow or day after, you will go down. So it's very
Yeah.
important to keep the interest of all these guys alive.
Makes sense. I think that's a great approach because I think even in the B2B space, I'm not really sure if people talk to the end consumer. So I think
Yeah,
that's a great approach because eventually you're satisfying what the customer of your customer wants.
yeah. That's important actually. Yeah,
Right. Makes perfect sense. Great. So let's talk about something that we were discussing even yesterday. The technology part of it, because yours is a
yeah,
technology product, right? And you are a
yeah,
non-tech guy,
yeah,
like I am, who knows, who's like, dude, these software engineers are different kind of people,
yeah.
and and whatever these techies do, and we don't understand. Like for example, I for one, I have never really paid attention to it, and I felt that I could never do it. But then I've been reading over the last some time. I posted on LinkedIn about it, and some people
Mm-hmm.
responded.
Mm-hmm.
I've been, for example, the Airbnb founder was a non-tech guy. The LinkedIn founder, Reid Hoffman, is apparently a non-tech guy. Peter Thiel is apparently a Stanford lawyer, and
Yeah,
he's one of the biggest voices in the tech industry right now.
yeah,
But in India, I mean, first of all, to start with, entrepreneurship to start with is difficult in India.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
your
Oh, I know.
family doesn't really respect you, and
Yeah.
then to go in a field which you don't understand properly, like you only use technology as an outsider.
Yeah.
So how do you build? Talk about that. Talk about your experience with building a technology.
Yeah.
What are the things that one should keep in mind as someone who doesn't understand technology per se?
Absolutely. So
Hmm.
just to start with, if you're starting a new venture, it's always good to have a tech co-founder with you and a person who is your friend. That's the
Yeah.
best. That's the sweet spot, right? So you
Right.
have a friend who is a techie, who is passionate about startups and who has the same mindset,
Hmm.
as what you have, because that, starting a new company, building it from scratch requires a
Hmm.
lot of conviction, requires a lot of passion. So
Yeah.
yeah, there is no replacement for having a tech co-founder,
Yeah.
but there are situations there, for example, like that of ours, where we did not have any tech co-founder with us, right? So we, four of us, all from different backgrounds, but unfortunately, or say fortunately, we did not have any techie guy with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but then again, it's not about, that if you don't have a tech guy on board, you can't start a company.
Right.
That's not right, right? We have examples like you mentioned, Airbnb, and there are multiple other examples which are there. Which companies which have been founded by non techies, and they
Hmm.
are $1 million companies.
Hmm.
The only difference is, if you don't have a tech co-founder, you have to come up with ways through which you can, fulfill that gap which is there in your company at the moment.
Hmm.
Because yes, if you are running a technology company, it's
Hmm.
very important to have people who are aware of the tech side of it, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
when you're building a product which is completely based on tech, so
Hmm.
you need to have those tech expertise on board. Now, this tech expertise can be in the form of a co-founder, which obviously if you don't have, then you can always go in and work with somebody who works as a consultant with you,
Hmm.
pay him
Hmm.
probably on an hourly basis, or say, engage with him on a project basis, so that, this person, has some interest, in working with you. Or worst case scenario, what you can even do is you can even go and, outsource some part of it, but that is like the last option. Means, personally, if you ask me, I would not even recommend that as a solution, outsourcing your IT or outsourcing or hiring freelancers. Why? Because typically when you're outsourcing your core business product,
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
actually killing your time, you're killing your money, and
Yeah.
you're completely wasting your time with these guys. Because, you know what you need to understand is, while the IT sector is definitely a very good boom for the Indian economy, and it's helping, uh, generate a lot of job opportunities, but the kind of state at which we are as startups, we cannot
Yeah.
afford to lose time, and we cannot afford to lose quality or the money, because our money is also limited, right? We're all
Mm,
we're all bootstrapping at the moment. So it's
mm,
very important to keep all of these things in mind. Try and get somebody in the game. Let the person have his skin in the game. If required, give him some small part of your equity, bring him on board,
mm,
engage with him, so that this person is also interested, right? If somebody is willing to work with you on a part-time basis, some techie guy who is not willing to come on a full-time basis role, probably have an engagement with him that, look, I'll bring you on a part-time basis for now, give you some equity in the game, right, on a vesting basis probably, and
mm,
then eventually I'll absorb you as soon as I have the right set of financial backing with me, right? For
mm,
example, if some investor invests in you, now you know that you have good 5-6 crores lying with you in the bank,
mm,
in a company's account, then you can
mm,
bring this guy on board, because now you can actually afford this guy, right?
mm, mm,
So that's the way. So you have to have a techie guy, either as a co-founder or as a part-time consultant with whom you are working with. But
mm,
remember one thing: whenever you are engaging with somebody who is working with you as a consultant or
mm.
working with you as on a payroll basis, you have to be the person who is managing everything, right? you
Okay.
you cannot just wash your hands away,
Right.
and this is for this piece of advice is for every budding entrepreneur out there. If you're
Right.
planning to start a company, you cannot wash your hands away from any of the pieces of work which run in an organization, right? There are people I've seen in my in the span of 3 to 4 years. I have
Yeah.
seen entrepreneurs who say, look, I am great at I'm great at management and managing employees and stuff, but I
Mm,
can't do the finance bit, right? Or
mm,
say probably I don't prefer doing recruitments. I'm not a very
mm,
HR kind of a person.
mm,
If that is the case, it's I would advise you that might well as find somebody who can do it for you, one of your co-founders, if he or she can do it for you, or else
right.
you can shut your shop and go away, because when you're in a startup, you have to be committed towards doing anything and everything.
Mm,
There could be situations. I'll give you an example. So we used to do sports events at the beginning of our initial startup days. Why? Because we wanted to understand the B2C side of the customers, right?
mm,
We
mm.
never went into hardcore as a sports event or company. Why? Because we knew that that is not the real problem. You already have 1,000 sports event companies out there who are organizing tournaments, right? So
Yeah.
we just did a couple of events because we wanted to understand what is happening on the ground, right?
Mm,
How customers react within the sports industry, because they react very differently from a
mm,
customer. When the same person is buying a consumer durable or an FMCG product, he'll behave very differently versus when he is actually at the ground playing a sport,
mm,
right? During these days, what there were situations when we did not have our staff coming up on time, early in the morning at 6:30, and the match is to be started at 7:30. So
mm,
I, along with my co-founders, and there were such times when we were climbing ladders, putting up the banners, swiping the cricket pitch with a broom to ensure that
mm.
everything is clean, because at the end of the day, it's all about there is no there is no shame at
Yeah.
what you're doing. No
Yeah. Yeah.
job is small, no job
Right.
is big. So
Right.
whether it is tech, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, or it's on ground work, or even sweeping your office for that matter, we need
Mm,
to understand it is
right.
it is our own property, it is our
Yeah.
own dream that we are trying to build, and
Right.
therefore you have to do anything and everything. And when
Right.
it comes to tech specifically, if you can't do it, work with the experts or the people who can do it for you,
Right.
but try and involve them in your company as much as you can. And
Right.
apart from that, one thing which I clearly missed mentioning was, if
Yeah.
you're running a tech company, try and get yourself a tech in-house team as soon as possible, because these are the guys who will help you build your product. These are the guys who will help you steer your way through the challenges which you face on the ground with respect to technology. And
Right.
never
Right.
outsource IT work. Never
Never
outsource.
outsource. So
Yeah.
great. So what? But overall, what's a good tech guy? So let's say what's if you were to understand tech, right? And if you were to hire someone to build, let's say, an app or a web product, what's a good tech guy? What's a qualification? Like, how do
So,
you
yeah.
assess a good tech guy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first most quality which I look in a tech guy, or say any other person whom I'm recruiting, is
Yeah.
the attitude. Is the
Okay.
attitude of the person. You
Okay.
know, and attitude can be defined by how receptive is he towards feedback. At the
Mm,
same time, how willing is he to learn new things. You know, if you have a tech guy
Yeah.
who is expertising in, say, one field of technology. Probably it could be Python and Django, for example, right? The techies out there might be aware of this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about right now. So if you're an excellent resource at Python and Django,
Mm.
and I as a startup tell you tomorrow, and you're employed with me, and I come and tell you that, look, boss, my current resource is not well, who handles the front end of the technology, which is React, for example, right? And can you quickly and probably do some bits and pieces on the React module that this other person was working on,
Right.
right? So
Right.
this guy should be receptive, should be intelligent enough to learn stuff, as
Okay.
and when, speed. It's all about speed in a startup. You don't have the luxury of learning something taking 2 months, and okay, then having sipping coffee and aram se seeking, or that kind of attitude does not work. So it's
Mm.
all about how receptive are you towards feedback, how receptive are you towards new challenges, and how
Mm.
receptive are you towards learning, right?
Mm.
If you
Mm.
can, if you find a resource,
Mm.
maybe tech or any other field for that matter, and
Mm.
this person is willing to learn, and is this person is willing to give his sweat to you, for
Mm.
helping you build the company, this is the best person you can have out there, and you should just gun for him. You have to get this guy on board, even
Right.
even if you have to spend a couple of extra thousands. I don't mind doing that. So that is the
Yeah.
best recipe. A person who is willing to learn. That's the first and utmost quality. Yeah.
Right. And by education, anything? And education, is he a software engineer? What is he by education?
Well, honestly speaking, so yes, obviously, education, the line from which he's coming, obviously does make a difference, because that kind of lays down the foundation. So somebody
Right.
who is an MCA or a BCA or an MTech or a BTech, right?
Okay.
Obviously, these guys have that educational background, and they know the basics of
Mm.
the whole side of expertise side of it.
Mm.
But then again, if you talk about the tier of colleges, so one of the biggest myths that I've seen, which runs quite prevalent in this industry, is that
Mm.
if people who are from the premier institutes like the IITs and the NITs of the lot. So not that I'm trying to say that these guys are not good. They're excellent. They're one of they're the cream in the industry.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's something that I'll not even debate on, right?
Yeah.
But then again, they come at a price. Let's be
Uh-huh.
practical.
Right.
We are startups, we are bootstrapping. For
Right.
example, if I have saved some X amount of money over the past 7 years of my career, then that's my hard-earned money, right?
Right.
And I can't just shed all of that money on two guys from a premium institute. So what
Right.
I would prefer doing is, I would prefer, if I have an option of getting somebody within my budget, excellent. But if I don't have that option, what do? I go to these B grade colleges, which
Mm.
again are in no way bad, very honestly,
Mm.
because whenever you go to any tier college, made with
Mm.
tier one, tier two colleges, you always have the cream on the top. People who
Mm.
are very, very passionate, but because of some XYZ reason, they could not make it to an IIT, or they could not make
Yeah.
it to an NIT, right? So
Right.
why not, as a startup, go and recruit from those colleges, pick up the
Okay.
cream, right?
Okay. Okay.
And the best part is, because thanks to the fact that we live in India, there are always people who are out there for jobs, right? There are always
Yes.
people out there who are looking for jobs. So that is
Yeah.
where this strategy plays beautifully, because you go to a tier two college, conduct interviews, pick up the cream, and they
Mm.
are more than happy to join you, because and the guys that you get there, they are very, very affordable for you as well,
Yeah.
right? You can get probably three guys from a premier tier two college, versus getting one guy from an IIT, right? Or
Right.
say from
Right.
some premium college.
Right.
But then again, you do take a hit in terms of quality. It could be a situation, but that is something that is quite prevalent across the tables. Probably you get somebody from a premium college, he could be a bad person, or say
Mm.
he could not a bad person, but he could not be the ideal fit for you in the
Right.
long run. And that is
Right.
something you realize only after a couple of months. The same
Right.
could be the situation with a person whom you're getting from a tier two college. So it's all up to your recruitment skills, and all up to the way you are actually going out in the market, and
Mm.
picking up people.
Right, right. And what else on a basic fundamental level? So there's technology, and then you build. For example, when you build the product, right? When you build Sports Uno, what did the initial product look like, and what stage can you start speaking to investors? At what stage are investors getting interested?
Well, when you talk about investors, so that is
Mm.
something quite that's quite a broad topic, because what happens here is, investors can, you can pitch to investors at any stage of your company. You can pitch to them at an ideation stage. You can pitch to them at a pre-seed or an initial conceptual stage, or you can even pitch
Right.
to them after you have launched the product and you have started generating revenue, and
Yeah.
the road is endless from there, right? So
Right.
every investor interest in a particular startup or a company differs basis on the preferences that the investor has towards his portfolio of investment, right?
Right.
If I have a
Right.
kitty of say X amount of money, then I already have it predispositioned within me that in how much money do I want to put on startups which are working at a conceptual stage versus how much money do I want to put on startups which are already generating revenue. And
Right.
within the revenue, you again have brackets. There are investors who would only invest in companies which are generating around 50, of an MRR of 50 lakhs, right? And then there are investors who are interested in putting in money
Mm.
in startups which are generating revenue, which is as low as say probably 50,000 or 20,000, because they only require the proof of concept. So
Right.
again, different investors have different preferences towards startups. Now
Mm.
coming to the product bit, the point which you asked, which point did we, how did we go about this,
Yeah.
doing, working on our product.
Yeah.
So the best way, what I can tell you is, the best way to proceed with any product or any startup is you build an MVP first, and that MVP has to be built on certain research that you do. So first, what you need to do is you need to identify a problem statement. Once you
Mm.
identify that problem statement, you need to be sure that, the problem statement is the actual problem. Many times what happens is people probably mistaken some symptom, or say some root, some basic symptom of a problem, and not actually pinpoint or say, drop down to the root cause of that problem, and they
Let's
create a
say,
whole startup.
sorry to interrupt, but what is your problem statement? What is the definition that you started with?
So, say for example, I'll take an example. So,
Yeah.
the Delhi pollution example, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is somebody I actually heard this from one of my mentors, and this is an excellent example.
Right.
So, when you take the case of Delhi's pollution,
Uh,
now when you have the whole pollution thing happening, what will the government do? The government will start implementing odd and even car, will or odd cars will fly on Mondays, even cars will fly on Tuesdays, and stuff. The odd and even funda will come in
yeah.
simultaneously. They will shut all industries, they will do all of those things, but assuming that this is the solution to the pollution problem which is happening in Delhi. What they fail to understand is the root cause of the pollution is the stubble, is the stubble which is being burnt by farmers in some other states, right?
Mm.
Now that
Mm.
is something that needs to be tackled and needs to be given a deeper thought at, right? So it's
Mm.
not about eliminating a problem which you so Delhi cars, yes, it definitely adds to the pollution, but that is not the root cause of the pollution. Similarly, factories, yes, they add a lot of pollution, but they are
Mm.
not the root cause of that intense pollution that happens during the month of October and November, and also November and December, right? the
Mm.
the root
Mm.
cause actually lies somewhere else. So
Mm.
what you need to do is you need to understand that root cause and
Mm.
then build a startup on it, right?
Mm.
So when you
Mm.
talk about us
Mm.
as a sports company, the
Mm.
root cause, or say the root problem right now in our industry lies within poor customer experience, the end
Okay.
customer's poor experience within the sports industry. What people are doing right now is, what many sports companies will do is they will build solutions which are around providing booking, probably providing a booking platform to
Yeah.
the customers and all, which
Yeah.
again is a problem, but that is not a root problem. That will not solve the grassroots level problems of the industry, right? And that is
Mm.
what we are trying to do. We're trying to solve that grassroots level of problem. So yes, what you need to do is you need to identify a problem statement.
Right.
That is step one towards
Mm.
any startup.
Mm.
Step two is go and validate it, doing
Mm.
by doing a market research. So through the problem statement, you'll come up with a solution, which
Yeah.
is a hypothesis which you create, that okay, this is the statement, this is the problem, this is the solution that I'm going to prepare. Now just
Mm.
don't go and start developing a product. Don't go and launch it, because there is no guarantee that it will be a success, right?
Right.
So what you
Right.
need to do is you need to do your market research for it. Once you have
Right.
done a market research and you
Right.
have a validation in the market, do a second leg of market research as to how much do you want to offer it for, with respect to
Mm.
pricing and with respect to other aspects, designing and user flow of the technology and all those things, right? Do a thorough market research, bring your understanding to the table, bring the understanding of the stakeholders, the business stakeholders understanding to the table. What do they want? Generate insights from it. Talk to the people around you, right? That is also that they also add a lot of value in terms of your friends, family members, or say your mentors, your potential investors. What do they think about the technology? Once you
Yeah.
have refined your technology, once you have refined your product, then
Mm.
launch it in the market, right?
Yeah.
And launch
Okay.
it with the basic set of features. Don't put everything on day one into it, because nobody is going to understand it. The people will lose, just trash it. If a classic example is that of Facebook, right? So Facebook, in what you see on Facebook today,
Mm.
it wasn't there 5 years back. It wasn't there 8 years back, right?
Mm.
Facebook started off with a very basic social networking platform as a social networking platform. Now they have evolved into something very different.
Yeah.
So you have your MVP is your product with your basic set of features, and that is
Mm.
what you launch in the market. Once you've got a good feedback of it, once you have done your beta phase testing, and once you've got your basic feedback on it, then
Mm.
start to improvise, add in new features as and when required, and build on your business. Yeah.
Mm. But initially, if you were to do market research without having something to show people, right?
Yeah.
Like initially, you have nothing to show people. Let's
Yeah.
say you say, fine, I'm trying to build a software platform for you guys to use for your
Yeah.
academy, which will help you analyze data, and it's a SAP platform, right?
Yeah.
So, but they'll say like, हमें कुछ देखने के लिए चाहिए. Like for
Mm.
example, how would, if when you have nothing to show,
Mm.
on what raw information do you conduct the research?
Well, the first leg of research that you conduct, that's never done on the prototype that you have, right?
Right.
It's always done on the needs of the
Mm.
people out there.
Mm.
That what are you doing right now? For example, it could be something as raw as, so what do you do? What do you do for a business? What are the challenges that you face? What are the
Mm.
prospective solutions that you think could be possible to solve this particular issue that you're facing right now, right?
Mm.
And further, what do you think are the needs of your end customers, so on and so forth. So the whole research leg is very, very raw at that moment. you
Right.
know Once you have understood all of that, once you have understood the needs and the the core problems of the industry, then start thinking, then take the suggestions which you got from the market in terms of
Mm.
the solutions.
Mm.
Obviously, it's technology is just a platform through which you would provide the solutions, right?
Right.
But the
Right.
core solution remains something else. So you have to understand that particular core solution,
Mm.
and then using technology as a platform, give out that solution in the form of your product, and then
Right.
take your product, the beta phase, product, to the people out there. Show these, show them, the product, that look, this is something that is, again, not directly although, but
Mm.
probably show them, talk about their needs, and I just do the ice breaking and stuff, and then
Mm.
understand their challenges, and then show them, look, what if there is a product like this in the market? Would you be willing to use it?
Right.
Right?
Right.
What is the kind of price you will be willing to pay for it? At the
Mm.
same time, what do you think, how would this product change your life? How would this
Mm.
product change your day-to-day business?
Mm.
Questions around that. And it's
Right.
more of a qualitative research that you have to do.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what people majority of the times do is they would just do a simple secondary research,
Mm.
do some secondary market research, do some Google scraping, and come up with figures. Look, my industry is a $10 billion industry, and it will do wonders and stuff. But what
Yeah.
you need to understand is you have to do your primary leg of research, right? Only then you
Yeah.
understand what your customer is doing, right?
Right.
Your $10 billion industry is a pan India figure, or say
Mm.
probably a global figure. But
Yeah.
within India, if you look, there are
Mm.
so many different demographics. A person from the north is very different from a person from the south, and within south, a person who's sitting in Mumbai, or say
Yeah.
a place in Tamil Nadu, is very different from a person who's sitting in Karnataka, right?
Right.
So it's very important to understand the psychographics of your customers or your
Right.
stakeholders in the industry, and then accordingly act and
Makes sense.
accordingly position your product.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Makes sense. So, so basically, if we were to, like, for example, MVP is a very important thing in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So because you'll have something to show and talk about that this is what it might look like.
Yeah.
What kind of, for example, from your understanding of technology so far, what kind of budget does it take to build a small product, or like,
Hmm.
so how much should one budget for it, and how fast do people do it?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'll actually answer your question two first. So how
Right.
fast should people do it? Well,
Yeah. Because I
startups,
remember you telling me yesterday that it got done in 4 days, which wasn't being done in a month.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
if I had to give you, so our case was quite different actually. It was quite complicated. So I'll not
Yeah.
deep dive into that problem right now. But what I can tell you in terms of speed,
Hmm.
uh, in the startup industry, it's all about execute and move forward as soon as
Yeah.
possible, right?
Yeah.
People say, don't think 10 times before you do something. Do it, fail on it if required. If you succeed, very good. If you fail
Right.
on it, don't crib on it. Don't think
Right.
that the ball has been lost now.
Right.
Do execute, think, execute, and fail, move to the next problem, or say move to the next approach immediately. Plan A fails, forget it, start with plan B. Plan B fails, forget it, start with plan C. Right? So
Yeah.
that is the approach that you need to have, and
Yeah.
everything needs to be very, very fast. you know Maybe post investment, once the investment in investor is there, obviously the investor will motivate you, and he will do his bit to ensure that you pick up speed. But what will you do till the time the investor is not there?
Yeah.
People have this tendency, even if you take the case of exams, we don't study till the time the
Yeah.
last day comes, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that is something that cannot be done here. You have to
Yeah.
do things on, you have to push the accelerator, and really go for the solution, or say
Right.
go for it. In terms of the first question that you asked, and that was around, if you could just quickly recapitulate the MVP part that you mentioned, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is an MVP? So MVP, as I said, it's an MVP is any product with basic set of features, right?
Yeah.
So whenever
Yeah.
you go out in the market, when you've done your research, right,
Hmm.
on the solutions to a prospective problem out there,
Hmm.
and you decide, okay, I'm going to build this product, right?
Hmm.
And probably the whatever product and whatever technology base it is, and whatever, all of these things are different. Within that, you have to actually bifurcate your solution into different buckets. Typically, how I would bifurcate is the must-have features, the
Hmm.
good-to-have features, and the delighters, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
must-have features are those features without which the person or the stakeholder or the consumer will never use your product, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it's a waste. It's a complete waste, and you've wasted your time and money. So
Hmm.
the must-have features is your MVP, and within must-have, if you can further bottle it to a couple of, a fewer number of features, that's the best way to go about it. Because you go by Apple's strategy, less is more,
Hmm.
right? the
Hmm.
the lesser the content, the lesser the number of features, the sooner and the more relevant those features are. Obviously relevance is the key factor here, but
Hmm.
people need to associate with what you're giving to them. They need to see value in it. So your must have features, as it defines, as the word must have defines, should provide instant value to the customers, and that is what is going to help you build your product.
Right.
Any other feature can be then further bifurcated. Features which don't fall in those must have bucket can
Yeah.
be bucketed into good to have features or delighters, right? Which can be further added with time, and as the time comes, and as you have more, as the days progress, and you get your feedback, and that, look, my MVP has been perfected, right?
Hmm.
And people are using it. Then
Hmm.
start and go to build your, good to have features and delighters. And then
Hmm.
it can definitely, they can further add additional delight to the person using that particular tool that you have given him. But
Right.
without the must-haves, the tool will never be used, and it will just
Right.
either he'll keep it dormant or he'll just throw it away.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
how much does it cost to build an MVP like that? This is the basic version which has must-have features for any industry for whatever product you're building. Is there a ballpark figure? One could say, let's say you bootstrapping, which you also did. How much should one budget for making the
Well,
MVP?
when you talk about an MVP, I would say, there is no specific figure to it, but the basic philosophy or the ideology with which you should, work in a startup when you're building a product or when you're doing anything else. It's all about optimizing costs,
Hmm.
right? Try and cut costs wherever possible without compromising on the quality, I must
Hmm.
add. But then again, it's all about saving costs. Be as precise and as cost efficient you can while you're spending in your company, because irrespective whether it's your own money while you're bootstrapping, or even when you're probably spending the money of the investor, right?
Right.
You need to
Right.
understand you have a certain runway,
Yeah.
which, with the money that you're having in your bank account, you can't just go out spending. I've seen people just spending 5 lakh rupees on just creating the design of a mobile application. They have outsourced it to some guy in the US who apparently is an excellent designer, and he's prepared the UI UX for you, and it's an amazing piece of work that is given you. But what you need to understand, you've actually spent 5 lakhs of your budget, man, on that. So one thing, what you and this is just 5 lakhs of designing. You still have the back end coding, the front end coding, and all those things have to be done. You have to spend money on that as well. So people build mobile applications. If you go and do some research, I would not like to name the app, which is quite prevalent right now, but there is this very renowned company which has built a mobile application spending almost 60 crores, right?
Wow.
And without even having without having getting any revenue out of that app till now. So there are companies who have spent that much amount. There are companies who even do it within a span of say 15 lakhs or 10 lakhs. How do they do that? Is through a model whereby you recruit people and you make them work on your technology, right? Let the guys on your payroll do the work for you. There is no point, again I'm emphasizing this, there is no point going out in the market, outsourcing your core product to an IT company out there. You can definitely do that when you are working in a bigger size blue chip organization, a big size organization, or a blue chip company, and that look, I have tons of money lying with my finance team. I just need to put in an email that look, I need an approval of 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs, and then outsource that piece of job to some small IT company in Noida or Gurgaon or Pune or anywhere, right? But there is no point doing that if you want to build your own product, because one thing which runs quite prevalent within the IT industry is a code which has been written by person A. Person B will always degrade that code, saying, look, this is not done right, this is bad, I need to fix this, I need to do that, and this is the amount of time I'm going to charge you, and this is the amount of money I'm going to charge you, right? And that is where the whole thing goes for it, because you as a company, you don't have that luxury of time and money. So you have to optimize cost wherever possible. And the best way to do it is hire your own team, have your own in-house team, have your own in-house people. May they be in the form of tech co-founders or consultants or permanent employees, but get the technology made in-house. This way you are saving a lot of time and you're saving a lot of money, and you're also getting best quality in it. Why? Because you are sitting with your tech team in the office, seeing what they are doing on a day-to-day basis. The same luxury you will never get while you're outsourcing the same similar piece to an IT company, because you can't sit with them 20 for 12 hours a day, but in your company you can do that, right? So that is where it's really beneficial for you.
So what you're suggesting, basically have someone on the team, be it on a consultant or an employee basis, whatever it is, that will be cheaper to build it, because you can have multiple iterations, and then everything won't cost you.
Yes, absolutely.
One very important thing just came into my mind while you were talking. So at what point did you incorporate? Like, for example, like you're testing, you're talking to people, you're doing the market research. At what point did you incorporate the company? And because initially, maybe when you were talking with your friends who are co-founders, initially maybe you were working from home, or when did you decide to formalize this whole thing and register as a company?
Well, different companies have different approach. Some company, I've seen startups, not even having, not having incorporated their company, and they've already built their product, right? I've seen companies do that. There are startups whom I've seen that they have incorporated their company at least 3 years before they actually start working on something, right? Because they feel that, look, let's do the incorporation first, uske baad we'll keep on doing stuff. So that also happens. So you have every kind of it actually depends on the mindset of the founders and the willingness to incorporate the company at what stage. But typically,
because I mean, you can probably answer that parallelly, because one of the things one of the reasons I'm asking is because, for example, you said you get a tech guy on equity, right? So until unless you have an incorporated company, you can't pay in equity. Isn't that the case?
Right. Absolutely, that is true. So that's the reason I mentioned. It actually depends on the on the gelling of the co-founders, or the mindset of the co-founders, as to at what stage they do they want to get the company incorporated, because incorporation of a company also comes at a certain cost, right? You have to if you have to fill a form, when you want to incorporate a company, you have to fill up forms, you have to pay some registration fees to the registrar office, and further get your trademarks done, and obviously there is a whole bunch of compliances that are there. And from the day you get your company incorporated, you have to file your you have to file your balance sheet at the end of the year. You have there are certain other financial compliances which have to be dealt with, for which you also have to hire a CA and
Mm.
get a lawyer on, get in touch with a lawyer who can do all the documentation work for you and stuff, right? All of that happens. That also comes at a cost. So there are many
Yeah.
companies who would typically delay that piece of work and say that, look, let's build the product, let's try and see if it's actually working or not, and then we'll incorporate it. But
Makes sense.
typically,
Yeah.
the best practice would be, it's always good to have everything done at the point you feel that yes, you're coming in full time and now you're really going to devote your time and money into something. It's best
Right.
to get your legal work done first, because that's the best way to to put everything on black and white, right?
Mm.
You
Mm.
can't have you can't have scuffles, you can't have any kind of arguments with the people you're working with. And
Yeah.
the moment you have everything on paper, people
Mm.
automatically get more streamlined into what they're doing. And they are they are far more organized and far more diligent towards the whole initiative, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that if you're giving out equity to a tech co-founder, then there's a proper formalized way of doing it, rather
Yes.
than just committing it, committing somebody, look, I'll give you 10%, you please work with me. what
Right.
what is the proof that you're given 10%? Why
Yes.
would that person work with you till the time you
Right.
formalize something? So you
Right.
need to, the best practices, get all your legal work done on day one, so
Right.
that tomorrow when the investor also comes to you, he knows that, look, this company is amazing. In terms of the paperwork, they're
Right.
amazing in terms of finances. I've
Right.
seen startups not building amazing products. I've seen
Right.
startups doing great on the ground, but when it comes to raising investments or say talking to an external stakeholder, they
Yeah.
don't get that. Why? Because all their legal and financial work is completely messed up, right?
Mm.
And that is the point. No person, what startups need to understand is, and even what we believe is, no investor would be willing to invest in a company if your legal and financial compliances are not in place. And that's
Yes.
very, very important.
Makes sense. So
Yeah.
quickly on a financial thing also, for example, how much initial equity did you start with? Like how much initial equity do companies in India start with
Yeah.
overall? And then when they're disbursing it, what's the initial financial framework? Like you said, you have to have a financial framework in place. What is the initial financial framework that a startup has to put in place when they are kicking off operations?
Well, so very honestly, that is one part which one of my co-founder actually expertises at.
Right.
So, but yeah, when you start a company, you typically get all your paperwork done. You know that, okay, we you are three guys or four guys or five guys who have started the company. You
Right.
know that every person holds these many number of shares in the company. You have a
Right.
paid up capital, right,
Mm.
basis which you allocate shares to every individual out there.
Mm.
And once the investment comes in, every point of association has to be penned down on in your shareholder agreement. So there is a SHA, which is known as the shareholder agreement. This particular document actually encompasses any term which is possible for the present date or for the years to come, in terms of what are the terms on which every director or every shareholder has to act upon, and
Mm.
how is he supposed to behave in different scenarios. For example, if an investment is coming in from X source, then what are the terms in that? How would the dilution for the shares be done in that case, versus if the investment is coming in from Y source, how will the dilution be done in that case? So all of those terms are properly penned down within that shareholder agreement. Typically, shareholder agreements can be as thick as say 80 pages to 100 pages as well, right? So they
Okay.
they
Okay.
they are proper booklets, which
Right.
you typically draft as a co-founder, as an entrepreneur. Two pieces of advice that I would give is,
Mm.
always be adept with whatever documents you're bringing in place for your company. You should
Mm.
have a good track of it, maintain copies of it, and
Mm.
never ever sign a contract without reading it, or any
Mm.
agreement. Because what you will fail to what understand is, what many people fail to understand is that, when they see an 80-pager contract, they say, yaar, who itna kaun padega? And
Huh.
that is the biggest blunder that you can do, because within that 80 pages there is this one point which is mentioned as a sub clause, which you might probably even miss when you're reading that whole book, is
Right.
that that could not be in favor for you in the future, or probably
Yeah.
could act against you in the future.
Right.
And the sad part is, probably all the co-founders are not aware of it, right? Or
Yeah.
probably some external founder has done something, or there is some mischief, some hanky-panky stuff going on. So it's what I'm trying to say here is, obviously, trust is the biggest factor, while you're starting a company, and there is no replacement of credibility or trust as a factor, within co-founders.
Hmm.
But then again, it's always good, no matter how close you are to the co-founders, how you know best of the friends you are with a co-founder, but it's always good to read the agreement which you're signing, right?
And this agreement, this shareholder agreement, is a standard format, or is differs significantly from company to company?
Yeah, absolutely. So different companies have different, ways of, having, as I said, the shareholder agreement typically can be something which is a big fat thick bundle of paper. That could be even a comparatively concise version of it, but
Okay.
that typically takes into account any kind of, terms that you have, the term sheet which we call, which we typically agree upon, on which all the co-founders or the investors typically who come in the future agree
Hmm.
upon, that these are the
Hmm.
terms on which we are going to associate on, and
Hmm.
basis that shareholder agreement is actually drafted.
Okay, fine, great.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, I mean, this is discussion can go on for a long time, but I think we should summarize it now.
Sure.
So to start with, you've been in this journey for like about 3 years, 4 years, four
Yeah,
years.
so we started off around 4 years back,
Yeah,
but the hardcore effort, which when we all came full time into this,
yeah.
and we really started devoting all our time to this, was around 2.5 years back.
2.5 years
Three
back.
three
So
years back. Sorry, 3 years back. Yeah.
3 years back. So three
Yeah.
years, I think you started. You created a product. You got some clients,
Yeah.
and you also got a couple of investors. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
last piece of advice for people who are considering entrepreneurship right now, Varun.
Uh-huh.
So what are the things that they should keep in mind?
Uh-huh.
What are the steps they should take? How should they go about it?
Absolutely. So, to all the entrepreneurs, the budding ones, or the people who have already taken that leap of faith,
Yeah.
um, is that if you're doing something, do it with full passion and
Mm.
conviction. Don't be disheartened by any kind of failures that you get in the in this long journey of entrepreneurship.
Mm.
Entrepreneurship is full of potholes,
Yeah.
and you'll have those bumps as you proceed every day. And there will be situations when you fall down very hard, but there will definitely be situations when you will rise, right?
Mm.
And it's as how I term it to all my other co-founders is that our startup journey from the beginning has been like this. It's been
Mm.
a wavy kind of
Yeah.
a journey.
Yeah.
And but then again, we as entrepreneurs, we should always focus on the highs and not on the lows.
Right.
But then again, not ignore the lows, because they are one of our most critical learning points. All Remember, whenever you're failing at something, you're
Mm.
learning something. But
Yeah.
whenever, if you're always having success in your startup, there's something wrong with your startup, and there's something wrong with you, because then things are not going to add up, fruit to be fruitful in the long run. But if you're failing, then yes, you're learning a lot, and that
Yeah.
is the best way to learn in your life and your career. And at the same time, lastly, whenever even if you tomorrow fail in your
Right.
in this business venture of yours, don't be disheartened. Always
Right.
remember that you have learned a lot,
Right.
from this small journey of that you have had. And
Yeah.
whatever you are going to do in your future going forward,
Right.
may it be a job, or a second business or a second startup,
Right.
you will bring a lot of experience to the table, right?
Right.
So it's always good to be motivated, be passionate, and go for it.
Right.
Go towards achieving your dreams. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thanks. I think that's
Thank
a
you.
great way to summarize that. Thanks, Varun. It was fun talking
Thank
to you.
you so much. It
I'm
was pleasure
sure.
talking. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll stay in touch, and good luck with sports Uno. I
Thank you.
really hope it keeps on going higher. And I really, I think I was thinking about it yesterday. I
Uh,
think it takes a lot to start up on your own and figure out the difficult things that you worked out. So yeah, I think you have every reason to be proud of yourself.
yeah, long way to go still. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thanks a
All
lot.
right, Varun. Thank you.
Pleasure,
Bye.
pleasure being here. Thank you.